Today we will be talking about Collaborator with the topic of discussion: stay home, stay safe, and stay on target. So we're looking at a brand new environment, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, and how Collaborator can assist you and your organizations in maintaining your code quality and your process flows. And for those of you that may not know who we are on the SmartBear, my name is Mel Gage. I'm a solutions engineer supporting the Collaborator suite. And joining me today is Jonathan Fortunati, one of our solutions engineers here at SmartBear, who also has extensive experience with Collaborator, as well as several other products that SmartBear has to offer.
Hi, everybody.
And on that note, a little bit about SmartBear. We've been around for quite a while. Collaborator is actually one of our oldest product suites, and we do run the gamut for your entire CI/CD process flows for testing, interface testing, application development. And we have a whole host of products, and we continue to make new acquisitions. Sometimes it seems so fast that these numbers are pretty much out of date every quarter. We're growing that quickly and continuing to bring new solutions to the marketplace. So anything you're looking for, smartbear.com is the place to start. And so we, as I mentioned, we run the gamut from design with our newly acquired Cucumber Studio. John is particularly versed in Swagger Hub for the design elements. Again, my specialty is the Collaborator suite, where we work with peer review for code and documents, ensuring that you get that high quality product out to your customers. And then the large foundation of our product suite is in the test suites, where you can test your APIs, test your UIs, cross-browser testing, and with our newly acquired Bitbar, we've actually moved into the mobility space too, where you can test and develop your applications on actual device hardware and make sure that they're running for the markets that you're trying to address. And then beyond the testing, after your deployment, we have our Alert Site product that helps you monitor what's going on with your products in a real-world environment. So our agenda today is the focus on Collaborator. We're going to talk a little bit about what we had as far as what our environment was up until just a few months ago. Then we're going to talk about the challenges we have now, where we're all trying to stay home and stay safe in light of the COVID-19 epidemic that we currently find ourselves immersed in. And then we'll move on to how you can stay on target with your CI/CD and your review and your quality goals with Collaborator as far as code and document review. We'll touch a little bit about what's new. 12.5 was released on May 18th. Some new functionality there, so we'll touch on that. We have a brand new Jira plugin for Collaborator, so it helps to enhance that functionality and the communication that we already had between Collaborator and Jira, giving you new options on how to increase your workflow productivity. And then we're going to talk about some of the, or at least one of the items that is on our near roadmap that I find extremely exciting, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. And then we'll go through a Collaborator workflow demo. Today we'll be demoing out of GitLab, out of GitHub, but we tie into many different types of source control management systems, many of the online systems, GitHub, GitLab, as well as the local systems through our client GUI, where you can tie into your local Git repositories, as well as Subversion and a whole host of others. But our main focus today is how we can improve our peer code and document review and ensure that we've got that collaboration going on and those communications going on in the challenge of today's world. It's crazy how fast this has changed, but at the same time, we look at how so many agencies have and organizations have responded and adapted to this new environment. So without further ado, let's talk about what we had. And from our picture here, what we did have, we had an office environment with ease of in-person communications. it was easy to go through code reviews and peer reviews and just to step across the aisle and get someone's thoughts and feedback on new items that you might be working on. And we had conference rooms for review meetings where we could get everybody together and sit down with those coffees and danishes and go through code line after line and make sure that it's meeting our requirements documents, and we can come to that in-person consensus. And with the design of our workspaces at SmartBear, we were in a very large open space work area. And as I said, if I wanted to go talk to John, he's 2 cubicles down. I just had to get up, go over and talk to him. But we're facing quite a different reality now. We had centralized access to resources. Our Collaborator development team, or part of them, as well as our Collaborator support organization, is just downstairs on the 3rd floor in our office. I could always go down there and ask questions about feature requests, product enhancements, new things that were coming out, and I could easily stay in touch with our latest development paths and fully understand where we were going with Collaborator and the amazing new things that we're bringing to the market for code and document review. And that touches on that last point with my sales team being right there on the same floor. I could stay in touch with them on follow-ups to help support our sales process, to make sure that you, the customers, are getting what you need and getting what you expect out of that onboarding process with Collaborator. And seemingly overnight, that's face-to-face, that interpersonal connection has basically just dried up. And and we're seeing a lot of new reports and studies and thoughts on how this new environment is affecting us. And one of the ones that, and I find myself doing this all the time, that really caught my attention was, yeah, I'm on video. You can see me. You can see my lovely outdated wallpaper from 1950 that needs to be changed. But even though I've got my camera on, I'm generally not looking at the camera. So we're losing that personal, that face-to-face contact. And even with video conferencing where the other parties are on the line, I'm going to be looking over here to see what they're saying. And again, not making that eye contact, almost with a small sense of dismissiveness. And I think it has really affected our working relationships. So it will be interesting to see in the times to come how this is going to continue to affect us.
Hey, Mel, can I add something there?
Certainly.
I think I was reading an opinion piece this morning, actually, about this, and there was talking about how when people are in an office, they have this, you're walking around, you're talking to people, you're seeing people, and when you're walking like down the hallway and you run into somebody, chances are you're going to talk maybe a little bit about work, but you're also ask them like what they're doing in their personal life, and you get to know them. And these like small, tiny conversations in the office helps build trust. And that kind of promotes this idea of psychological safety, which I'm sure most of the people on the phone are probably familiar with. But one of the big, I guess, results of fostering psychological safety is now you have a workforce, a group of people working together who are more likely to take risks and do things that they may or may not work because they're not afraid to fail. And it was just interesting in how, I think it was a CEO, he was talking about how this is one thing that he's missing in his team, because on the Zoom call, we don't have those you have to like really work to create those, moments of humanity between your coworkers. I could, but I'm not going to just like randomly call up somebody for marketing for 30 seconds and say, hey, how's it going? Whereas maybe I talk to them if I bumped into them in the hallway, but I don't know them quite well enough to just call them out of the blue and say, hey, hi, I have no reason to talk to you, but how are you doing there?
And that's a great point. I think I'm fortunate in that type of situation. The team that I support is much smaller than the teams and the folks that you support and manage. So I do find myself reaching out to my sales team on occasion, just pinging them, saying, hey, you got a moment to chat, and trying to maintain that. But you're right, it's certainly not organic in its feel, and and it does feel a little bit forced. But I do think maintaining those types of connections is going to be important. So with that, let's go ahead and kick off our first poll. So are you currently working remotely because of COVID-19? And we'll leave that up for a couple minutes and see how that goes. I know that like in our situation where we are a software company and we are developing, and a lot of our teams were fairly distributed already, I know that there are a lot of coders, a lot of developers that are working on embedded type systems where you just can't be away from the office. You can't be away from that hardware that you're writing code for. And so we'll give that about another 30 seconds and we'll share those results.
One of my good friends works for Electric Boat down in Connecticut, and he has still had to go into the office because there's a large mechanical and electrical engineering component of building a sub, obviously. So they have to go into the office to actually work on things, and they've been doing shifts where basically they have some people who come in for like a morning shift, an evening shift, and then like a later at night shift. So he's been at the office until like 11 o'clock some nights,
How did he give you any information on how fully staffed their shifts are? And I ask because I know I've heard some rumors about how SmartBear may be reopening, and it's going to be small chunks at a time. Are they working full staff? And did he?
But he manages a team of systems engineers. So his team, I think those types of engineering people, I would say like maybe 30%. I think they have their like coders and some other people who can work remotely. But some people who work on more classified systems, they have to connect in, I'm assuming, on like a desktop that's on their local network. They don't have the same laptop connectivity that like we can have with our VPNs and stuff like that. They have some different constraints. But I think it's around like 30 to 50% at a time.
Okay. Yeah, I think the rumors that I heard about SmartBear were looking at a 25% for initial, and I think that's partly based on Governor Baker's recommendations and guidelines for the state of Massachusetts as well. So I've shared the polling results. We're at about 50%, 100% of the time from home. That's the situation that John and I find ourselves in. We do have a small mixture of home and office, and then a very small percentage, and we salute you folks that are still going into the office. Thanks for participating in our poll. We've got a couple more coming up throughout the presentation today. So let's talk about staying home, staying safe, and the challenges that we have now, especially when it comes to peer code and document review. So as I'm sure though that 50% of us that are working from home, I'm sure you find yourself in a very similar environment that we do. Our teams are even more distributed and isolated than they have in the past. But that doesn't mean that we can let our CI/CD pipelines and our timelines and our targets slip just because we are faced with a little bit of a challenge. So we've had to rise up, and Collaborator helps us do that. And we'll talk a little bit about that a little further on in the presentation. We are working from home in a crowded personal space. I know, John, you personally have not been in the same location since we started, and your work environment has been a challenge at times.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if people can hear right now the background noise coming from mine. So where I live is in Dorchester in Boston, the Boston area, and I'm right over one of the main roads into Boston, 93. So you can hear the cars going by, and you can also hear the trains because the trains come by too. If a motorcycle comes by, you'll definitely hear that. So, that's been a challenge. It's tough for presentations like this. Working at my place is not built to be a home office.
Yeah, I was fortunate in that regard. I had just purchased a home late last year. I had a spare room that was the original dining room I had planned to remodel into some other laundry and bathroom. This has become my office. I set up a table. I brought home equipment from work, and we're set up here for the long term. But yeah, when I've got my kids, they're constantly bopping in and out. Fortunately, mine are old enough; they're teenagers. I can tell them to go away, and they usually follow that instruction. But even on our team calls, we see people with younger children popping in all the time, and we may be fortunate and get a cameo appearance from my cat later on. I don't know where she's off to, but she often shows up on my webinars. And we find ourselves working non-standard and varying work hours because of, and the one thing I never really considered when I started to get my kids here is how often I have to feed them. You know, I get up and I'm making breakfast, and just about the time I get cleaned up, I sit down, I start to get into my emails, I maybe do a call or two, and I look at my watch, and it's already time for lunch, and I've got to take that time out and get them, make sure that their needs are being met as well. So that sometimes means that I'm up early at 5:30 to 6 o'clock taking care of work, or I'm working a little bit later to offset that, and to also stay in touch with my customers and my trials that are in different time zones that are a little spaced out from us.
And there's a context switching associated with that, or I'm sorry, there's a cognitive load associated with context switching like that, where you're in the middle of something, then you have to leave your desk to prep something for your kids, and then you come back and what was I doing? And it takes effort and energy to get back on track. Something that we probably still have in an office environment, people stopping by your desk, but at least your day is more focused in the same theme throughout the day.
Yeah, and I wouldn't think the office environment interruptions, I don't think are of a length. Granted, there are interruptions, but they're not of a length that's really going to drag you down from your previous focus. It's a little easier to step back into that, but that's an excellent point. And then what are we going to be looking at when we do go back to the office? We've already talked about smaller workforces moving back, and John and I are solutions engineers, but we support a sales team. And when they're talking about bringing back 25%, we're still going to be faced with social distancing requirements and safety precautions. We're going to be wearing masks. We're going to have our cubes broken up and separated by a minimum of 6 feet. How are we going to be able to perform our jobs well, under the auspices of being on the phone and talking to customers and presenting like we are now? Can you imagine me sitting here with a mask on and trying to do this from an office environment? I think we're still moving into the tunnel as far as what we're going to be looking at, and so I think our home situation is going to continue for quite some time. So with that, let's talk a little bit about impacts. I'm going to set up our next poll. So how has this new environment affected your code and document review process? And again, we'll leave that up for a couple minutes while we move on. So as my good friend Dermot in Galway, Ireland is fond of Star Wars, that's where we came up with our stay on target. So, we're flying down Beggar's Canyon sometimes trying to hit tiny little womp rats. And how does Collaborator help us do this? Well, Collaborator is a comprehensive code and document review tool. It's designed for a central location that you can bring your review artifacts and your review materials together. You can assign reviewers, you can assign the workers that you need to be looking at your documents and looking at your codes. And it's there to support widely distributed work teams. We have global organizations using Collaborator very effectively with their teams spread all across the globe and having to do their peer and code reviews across different time zones. And they may not all be on the same schedules. But the nice thing that Collaborator does do is it gives you that freedom to do it when your time allows in your schedule. And as we talked about in our new environment, we often are working around those obstructions, working around those interruptions, and we are doing our work when we can. And Collaborator gives you that functionality that you can sit down and pull up a code review and look at it when your time allows. We also bring together group communications regarding a review all in one place. So we manage and we maintain a huge set of data points around your reviews, whether they're code or whether they're document, and it fosters a group communication around documents, around defects, around the review as a whole. Actually had a conversation with a gentleman last night who is using one service and was looking at Collaborator. And I thought I asked him, well, why what is the issue that you're seeing? And his number one point was communications around defects. He can have his reviewers in his current tool put notes and stuff, and he can't find them. And Collaborator brings that together in a very easy to find place, and you can easily track those communications and have a discussion. I did mention that we do maintain a huge database of details. This is for audits and regulatory reasons, but beyond that, you can also create custom fields for your defects. So you can categorize them as you need to and use Collaborator's reporting capabilities to examine your process where you might be able to make process reviews and process improvements to work out those little bugs. And they're also it's also a great way to bring in mentorship for new individuals in your organizations. You may get those brand new interns coming in for, well, obviously not coming in now. They're going to be working from home if you get interns. But again, this makes it an easy tool for them to get involved in your code process, looking at what you're doing, looking at what the seasoned professionals in your organization are putting out as far as code, and beginning to understand how that works and how that fits into your code processes and your code standards. And then with that, it just ensures that your customers get that quality code. That's what peer review is about. There is an established cost of bugs getting it to the field, getting out to your customers, not in just how your product may function, but also a cost to your reputation when those customers get a little upset with what they're experiencing. So getting that code and shifting left and finding those defects as quickly as possible certainly saves you money, and the ROI on investment like Collaborator is easily justified. So we're going to go ahead and end our poll. I'll share our results. And I'm assuming, since you guys are here to talk about code and document review, that you're in a very similar type of situation as John and I. We haven't seen a large disruption in what's going on with what we're doing in our day-to-day work lives. And I sit in on our development calls with our development team around Collaborator. So we talk about the sprints and we talk about what's going on and who's fixing what bugs. And we really haven't seen hardly any change with what's going on in this current environment as to how we're working on a day-to-day basis. And so I'm not terribly surprised to see that nearly 60% saying that they're not really being affected at all. And then again, small 40% with only a slight disturbance in what their normal work processes are. So thank you. So we'll talk a little bit now about what's new. Like I said, we just launched 12.5. That came out on May 18th. I've kind of bugged our development team to update my demo server. So unfortunately, what I'll be showing you today is on 12.402. But we do have some new functionality in 12.5. We're going to talk a little bit about the Collaborator plugin for Jira. That is a downloadable and installable application on your Jira server that, again, enhances that functionality. And then we'll touch on a little bit more of what's coming. So what is new? We've added some new functionality to automatically start pull request reviews. So you can move the pull request reviews directly to the inspection phase and make Collaborator an even more frictionless part of your review process. For those types of repositories that support the pull request, and those are going to be your GitHubs, your GitLabs, your Azure DevOps repos that support the pull request functionality, you can move your reviews directly through that with subscriptions through that process directly from your repository, create the review, and have that notification go directly out to your reviewers and begin the process. Again, frictionless, seamless to your authors, and you can move that process right along and continue your CI/CD pipelines. We're adding new functionality, or we have added new functionality to export reports in a docx format. Previously, our detailed reports were only available in a PDF form, or you could print a hard copy. and we've added docx functionality there. And our larger overall report formats are also available to export in the docx format. We're going to show you the Collaborator plugin for Jira. It extends the functionality. You can now create reviews directly out of Jira. It's certainly a little bit more flexible for the local repository systems that work through the GUI, such as Git or Subversion. The pull request types of integrations are creating their own reviews, and you can still sync back out to Jira from within your review, so you have that bi-directional functionality. We can also connect to existing reviews directly out of Jira, and we'll show you how that works. And then one of the things I saw on our sprint demo this week that's coming out in the 13.1 server, which should be our next release. I don't have timeframes on that. Currently, you can only assign one checklist per template in Collaborator. This new functionality lets you do multiple checklists, and folks have asked for this, and it's finally coming to fruition. It looks well baked. The demonstration I saw was really cool. You attach multiple reviews. It gives you, multiple checklists. It gives you tab functionality, so you can look at those checklists, and it gives you a tab count on that tab that shows you how many of the items on a particular checklist have been completed. So you have a quick, easy view of what still needs to be completed regarding your checklists. Really cool. Really looking forward to that hitting the market. So with that, let's take a look at Collaborator itself. And let's see how this goes, because I was setting things up prior to, and it's not going to do what I want to do. So there we go. So I'm going to start with basically just a small code review here. And I'm going to make a small code change here in my GitHub repository, and that's going to create my review directly out in Collaborator. We're not going to be doing much with GitHub today. I want to go through more about what Collaborator is all about and what Jira is all about, but I just want to show you how easy it is to start this process. And I know my process here is a little off. Typically, we would have this downloaded to our local machine, and we're pushing back up to our Git repositories, but I'm going to work just directly here in GitHub this afternoon. Just going to make a quick edit to my file just to kick off our process. And I'm going to commit my change. And I'm actually just going to use this and create a patch branch. So we're going to propose my file change. It's going to come up and ask me some information and some additional functionality we've recently added. If you are GitHub users, and your users in GitHub are mapped out to Collaborator, you can actually assign your reviewers directly here in GitHub, and they will map out to Collaborator. So you can put your reviewers directly out in Collaborator right from GitHub. So that's pretty cool. So we'll give us a title, and we can leave some comments. This is a change one review request. We're going to create our pull request, and this is going to start our review process. We'll see that populate here. There we go. Collaborator's coming up. My review's in process. I can also use this in GitHub as a gating check. So I'm not able to merge my code until my review is complete. So you want to make sure your quality code's getting out. You want to make sure your reviews are getting done. That functionality exists to make sure that we're gating through our process and hitting all those steps. So with that, we can go directly out to our review. We'll simply click on our link. It will take me out to my Collaborator server, and we'll be set up in our planning phase. Our usual workflow through Collaborator is from a planning phase, through an optional annotation phase, push to inspection once we've met our planning criteria, and then a cycle rework inspection process until everyone's happy with what the review looks like, and then we move it to a completed state. So one of that new functionalities that I just mentioned on the previous slide, we can set up to push directly from the planning phase into inspection by assigning my reviewers and attaching all required materials and moving through that process even more frictionless than we are now. And our Q&A, just to remind you, our Q&A window is open. I haven't seen any questions, but if anybody has anything, please feel free to let us know what you want to know. I will assign a reviewer. We'll use Patrick today. And we're going to put him into my review role. And we'll see that takes care of my red requirement based on my current template, and we're just using the default template at the moment. I'll show you what a more advanced template looks like, because I do want to touch on how checklists look. Again, I don't have the version that shows you the neat tabs, but you're going to see where those go, and I'll explain how that's going to work. So communication is what we're talking about today. Communicating in a detached environment. You can see all my comments from GitHub have shown up here in my review, and my review title was updated with the notes that I put in there as well. And then Collaborator has an overarching chat on every single review. So we can leave comments here. We can actually leave comments as review defects. If maybe we're looking at this and we're a process manager and somebody has actually pushed a review before it was ready, we can come in here and leave a comment, this review isn't ready. And we can actually leave that as a defect that's going to prevent our review from being completed, and approving merges, approving code that may be set to automatically merge. That's functionality that Collaborator brings to the table with those webhook integrations. We can tell Collaborator how to handle our repositories on the other end when our reviews are complete. I believe my GitHub is set up such that when my review is complete, I'm going to go ahead and do a code merge, and I can even delete that patch development directory or that branch that I created. But we're just going to leave a comment here, and just going to add that comment. And I do want to pull up one more window, and I'm going to resize this one. Let's see, this is Patrick's account. And I want to show how Collaborator encourages this communication. So we haven't moved our review to inspection yet, so Patrick hasn't gotten a notice, but we're going to do that now. I'm going to go ahead and move this to inspection, and it's going to put my author's account into a waiting status. Our author's pretty much done everything they need to do. Their code is attached. We have our matrix showing who's involved with the review, and so now it's Patrick's turn to pick that up. And he's going to get an email saying you've got that review and it's ready to be picked up and worked on. So from Patrick's viewpoint, we're going to see, let me refresh his screen here. We're going to see that new GitHub pull request review show up. We can also sort our action items from my title, my review title. And if we're also concerned about making sure we're getting the reviews done when we need to, we can actually sort by deadlines too. So we can look at these and say, oh, which ones are more pressing than others, and we can take action on what needs to be accomplished. So we're going to go into our review, and Patrick's going to see pretty much the same information. Well, he is going to see the same information that we're seeing as populated by my author. He is in the review role, and we can see that here that he's assigned as a reviewer. We can simply send out quick pokes via email and send out email messages if we want to communicate that way to our authors, other members on the team. But we have this communications chat here. New information is highlighted in yellow, and Collaborator can be set as a requirement based on what role you have within the review to actually read these, mark them as read. Again, this is very, very helpful for those regulatory agencies that have to show their code review process and maintain archives and documentation to the effect that they are meeting their standards and meeting their processes. So we can mark these as red. It will change those from yellow back to the neutral gray. We also have an accept button. So if you actually need to name stamp these, we can do that as well. And we'll see that those changes, and that indicates everything above that point has been accepted. And what we're going to see, I mentioned that near real-time communication as Patrick is putting comments in here. I picked up this review. I can add this comment, and there's a very short server delay and web page refresh that allows you to work in parallel. So if you have 5 reviewers assigned to a particular review, you can have all 5 of those individuals working on the same review at the same time. And if John's in there making comments, marking defects, I'm going to see those updated in near real time as well. I can either agree with those, I can disagree with them, I can leave my comments on them, and it greatly shortens your review time rather than doing email reviews or just dropping it up in an area where online where someone one at a time can log in. We had one customer that came back, and after they implemented Collaborator, she made the comment that our reviews are now incredibly easy. Our review time went from days down to hours. So they're getting a lot more process flow through their reviews because of Collaborator. So Patrick's going to take a look at our file, and this brings up our differences viewer. And we're looking at the changes that we've made. We'll see that new code line in green. Deletions will show up as red, and change lines will show up as yellow. So you have very quick visual cues as to what has changed in your differences viewer. This is fairly common across most differences viewers, and we're no different. If you have huge files, thousands of lines of code, we have an overall chat window that can be used to direct your reviewers where to look. That's how our internal team uses this particular window. This chat, even though it says overall, it applies to this particular file alone, and there's an overall chat window for each file in the review. So I can leave comments, look at lines 15 through 20. And that just gives them a little bit of indication of where to start. We'll leave that comment. We also have these up and down arrows. If you have large code files, Collaborator is going to highlight those differences between the files, and we can simply use these up and down arrows to jump from diff to diff. So if our next diff in a 1,000-line file wasn't until line 600, I can simply click on this button, and it's going to take me down to my next diff, and we can work from those, leaving comments and starting conversations. So on that, as I'm going through my code and I see something that might need to be changed, for example, missing a letter in my variable name here, I can simply click on this line of code and start a conversation at this line. Needs an R. And I can add this as a review defect. So we had talked a little earlier about how we can classify and use and monitor our defects and use those classifications to improve our processes. These fields are custom fields, so you can create whatever you need to for your classifications. I'm just going to call this major coding status, and I'm going to add this as a review defect. And we'll see that populates my differences viewer with the little red bug. And red bugs mean that review is in process and cannot be completed until all of these defects are resolved to everyone's satisfaction. So we can continue the conversation. And this is where the gentleman I was speaking with last night found Collaborator such a huge value add over what he's currently using, because this conversation at line 16 is only for this line. He doesn't have to go look for it. It's right there. He simply can come in and click on that line. He can click on that defect. We'll see back out in my review screen in my defect log that these are populated there as well, giving us quick, easy access to go and look at what people are marking, what people are commenting on, and really enabling those communications and those discussions around defects to make sure that you are resolving things to everyone's satisfaction. We've talked a little bit about the new Collaborator for Jira plugin, and we're going to want to demonstrate that. So I am going to add another defect. This is just a basically coding standard. If I had run my Java code through a linting tool, it would come up and tell me I need to unstack these variables. So we're just going to do that. And we'll start by adding this as a minor defect. And we'll just call this best practice. We're going to add that defect. However, instead of leaving this as a defect, we are going to edit this because we don't want this to hold up our code for release. It's a minor thing, but just based on our standard practices, we want to fix it. I can track this externally simply by clicking on this button and entering a Jira project and associated project number. Now, this is if I happen to know what project this file might be associated with, and we use Jira internally for our development sprints and for tracking our development issues and our bugs. So when we're doing reviews, we are mapping back out to Jira with our project names, and we might know what those are, and we can simply type in that name and project number and associate it with that project. In that case, I'm just going to, well, before we do that, we also can export the issue. This one's a little bit more involved. I can't do this from Patrick's account because he doesn't have a Jira account, but I can also create a brand new Jira issue around this particular item if I wanted to. It automatically populates some information out of Collaborator. We can select an associated project out of Jira with our tracking service that we've mapped into Collaborator. So I'm just going to leave this with the collab, and then we can select an issue type, basically just an improvement, and I can create issue. If I have an authorized account in Jira, when I do this, it's going to create a brand new issue in Jira. So Patrick doesn't have the authority to do so, so we're just going to track this one externally. And we'll use 234. And what we're going to see with this integration is my bug is now changed from red to blue, meaning this is something that needs to be addressed but may not hold up our code. And we can continue that conversation out in Jira. I have a direct link out to the Jira integration. And with an approved account, selecting this link will take me out to Jira, and I'll show you that back in my author's account. So we've made some comments, we've left some defects, and we're now ready to send our code back to rework. We're going to see a few things on my home screen. We're going to see that my matrix has updated with this information, showing that Patrick has left comments, he's left a show-stopping defect, and he's left something that needs some attention. And again, we have these links directly back to those locations within that file. So it makes it extremely easy to go in and take a look at what you should be looking at rather than being distracted by things that have been set in stone for quite some time. We have that external defect up here in our defect log with its associated link out to Jira, and our remote systems integrations also added that Jira project to a hyperlink to that Jira project, and we still have our link back to our GitHub initial pull request. So we're going to go ahead and send this to rework, and this will send it back to my author's account where he can make those changes and do some updates. So we've looked at our basic review process. I could certainly go back out to GitHub, update this file, push it back out, and we can resolve some defects. But I do want to show you our Jira integration. And in the interest of time, let's take a look at what that looks like now. So my author account can simply click on this link and go out to Jira. We had already associated this project in Jira with a particular defect. And you'll see I use this one quite often. I have several reviews linked into this particular project. And our latest one is added here. This is our GitHub pull request that we're currently working on. It is a bi-directional link. I can click on this link and go back out to my review. But within Jira, I can also come in and make my assignments to whomever needs to work on this and get this in work. Our Jira plugin, the Collaborator plugin for Jira, adds some new functionality. We talked a little bit about this, and we can see all of the reviews that have been associated with this, this particular project, the state that they were in. We can use these links and go back out to those reviews within Collaborator. But we also have the functionality to link to an existing review. So if, for example, I had a code review going on It had come out of GitHub, and I wanted to add a ticket for, or a work project issue for some additional enhancements on that particular piece of code. I can simply click on this button, and it will give me a list of the reviews that I have access to out on Collaborator. And I can now simply select one of these reviews. Let's just do this. I'll select this review, submit that, and we've now also set up that bidirectional link automatically out in Collaborator, so we can go back and forth between this issue and that particular review. I had mentioned that we can also create new reviews. This is more suited to those local types of repositories like the Git and Subversions, because your pull request, as I mentioned, is going to create those reviews for you. But you can create new reviews and attach documents and attach files manually. You can, now that you have a review number created, in this case 1364, you can go through the client GUI interface through a Git or a Subversion or a clear case or a PTC integrity integration, and select an existing review to attach materials to. So you're setting up that workflow and integrating everything from Collaborator through your code repository system and Jira. It's a really cool functionality, and we've seen a lot of good conversations around that. So in the nature of our review, let's go ahead and finish our review up since we have a little bit more time. I'm going to go back out to my GitHub, and I can certainly do this from within Collaborator as well, because remember we had that bidirectional link. I'm going to look at my current pull request. And again, not the usual workflow, but I'm just going to edit my file here on GitHub. So we're going to edit my file and make the changes that were requested. So we'll just call this change 1 rev 1. We're going to change our R's, make our variables match the way they're supposed to. And for grins, let's go ahead and unstack these variables to maintain our coding standards. I'm going to go ahead and commit this directly to that patch branch that I'm working in. And this is going to update my commit. If we go back out to my pull request conversation, we're going to see that it's been updated, and we've added some new function, some new code to our review, and we're going to see that reflected in my review out here in Collaborator. We'll see new information highlighted in yellow, and that new version of the file was uploaded. We'll see that listed here in my resource review materials area with the commit hash. So you have that tracking, again, for those auditory reasons. And we can go ahead and send this to inspection and have Patrick take a look at it and sign off on those. Through roles and additional functionality in Collaborator, you can control who's allowed to mark defects as fixed. Let's go ahead and show you what that looks like. So I've sent it to inspection. We'll have Patrick just take a quick look at these. And we'll see these changes I mentioned highlighted in yellow. And yep, sure enough, we've got everything taken care of the way we want to. We can come in, mark these as fixed. Again, if Patrick didn't agree with these, we could continue the conversation. He could leave a comment, send it back to rework, and have the author do a little bit more work on it. So we've resolved that one. We've seen our bug change from red to green. For our other issue, we're going to reopen this as a defect, and we're going to go ahead and mark it as fixed because we've resolved that to Patrick's satisfaction as well. We can leave that comment. Everything looks good now. I can type and just add that comment. We can now go ahead and send our review to completed because we've resolved all of our open issues. Our author will see those updated as well. Our server delay by default is about 15 seconds. So that's why we use the term near real time. It is adjustable. So if you want a little bit shorter times, you can certainly set that as you need to. Again, you may have the requirements for your roles to mark things as read. We can simply come in and acknowledge what has gone on. I'm going to mark all read, and that satisfies that requirement for my particular role. The final thing that I wanted to, or a couple things I want to touch on, we do have detailed reporting. So I want to see what's going on in a particular review. This is where I'd mentioned we now have docx functionality. So you can save these reports out in a docx format. You still have PDF functionality as well. Many organizations will complete a review. They'll download the PDF or now docx. They'll attach that into their repositories just as an artifact showing proof of review should it ever come up in the future. But it gives you all types of information on your defects, your time spent. We've had a couple questions come up in the window. I'm going to get to that in just a moment. But we have all of our information here associated with this particular review. Our reports tab gives you some additional functionality. You can look at larger numbers of reviews based on different criteria, different filters, different sorting. So if someone comes in and says, hey, I need to see your reviews from 2010 to 2011, you can simply go in and pull reports very quickly, very easily, and export those in several different formats as well. So to our questions, Oleg asked, can I attach an external link or doc to my review conclusions? You can put in external hyperlinks to documents. We have some organizations, and that brings me to a very good point. Show you a little bit more advanced template and what can be done. And well, that group is not eligible for the templates. You can limit what templates your groups can use. So if you have concerns, let's take a look at a more advanced template. So to the point about can you put an external link in, you certainly can. This is a template based loosely around a DO178C aviation standard. And we'll see these items that are highlighted in red are required to move to the next phase of the review. And in this particular case, we've got a regex expression requiring an HTTP link out to a SharePoint document. So you can drop in the links out to those documents. John, did you want to take the second one?
Sure, I can try to take this. Let's look at the question. You know, that's a good question. We have talked about Confluence integrations and plugins. That's something that has come up recently. So you can attach documents to Collaborator reviews. And so, for example, you could download something from Confluence and attach it to a review. We'll actually perform the diffs on that too. Apologies, Mel, if you said that already. I was responding to a Slack at one point, so I may have missed it.
No, I didn't touch on that. Thanks.
But yeah, it's definitely something. So right now, I can't speak too much for products. So I truthfully, the answer is I'm not sure if we have that on our backlog. But I can say, you know, the integrations with Jira and Atlassian products is something that is on most of our tools backlogs and is something that's pretty high priority. So I would not be surprised to see something there. But we can definitely get you in touch with our product team if you would like to talk to them about kind of that use case for you and you know, compare that to what we were thinking for that there.
And also, Oleg, to answer that question a little further, you can certainly upload materials manually. Simply use the upload functionality, select files, and you can select from your network drives and attach files directly to the review. Just to show you, we can select one and upload that file, and we'll see that file now associated with my review materials. These are not going to get mixed in with your Git repository, your repository files, you're actually going to see these in two separate sections. So it's very nice that it does keep those artifacts separate if you are looking for conclusions. If you're looking to add that report directly to your reviews, you can certainly do that. I did want to show you guys, this is what the checklists currently look like. We build out individual items. We can create custom fields, as all of these are. The new functionality is going to give you a drop-down that's going to allow you to select which checklists you want to associate with this particular review, and it will tab those across the screen and give you headers for those checklists, as well as the number of items associated with that checklist. They'll have an asterisk associated with the title if that is a required and mandatory checklist, and no asterisk for optional checklists. So there's going to be a lot more functionality as far as tailoring your reviews to the teams that need to see them, and adding those team-specific items for your workflows. Let's take a quick look at document review. I did want to show you how that looks in Collaborator. We are one of the very few options that allows you to do code review and document review in the same tool. Many will do one, some will do the other, but we proudly incorporate both, and we've done a lot of improvements on our document review. The functionality, the workflow is almost exactly the same. The differences come in when we are marking items for change or for review. We use a push pin functionality. So when you see something that you would like changed, it's simply a matter of clicking in the document, dropping in that push pin, and beginning that conversation at that pin. We support many different formats. We see PowerPoint formats, we see PDF formats, we support graphics formats. Graphics formats are extremely useful for large format documents. Working with an agency right now that typically reviews in PDF format. Just to show you what the graphic format can let you do, I believe maybe this one that I've done that. Yeah. So I have two documents. I'm just going to show you, and I know we're coming up on our time, so I do appreciate the patience to go a little bit over. So when we're looking at our documents and we're looking at PDFs, it's a matter of a visual inspection. When we're looking at the same image in, say, a JPEG format, we get a little additional functionality. So we can certainly zoom in and take a look at our documents. Actually, let's zoom out a little bit. That's a little too close. It's about 25%. We can certainly zoom in. We can switch to our zoom functionality and lock our mouse so that as we're reviewing our documents, we can scroll and do our comparison. We can see a small change there. But again, you're relying on what you can see. By converting that PDF into a JPEG for something like a schematic or a diagram, you can do an overlap. And this is really cool functionality with images because we give you a transparency slider. So you can easily slide between two documents and visually pick up what's going on and where changes have occurred in these documents very quickly and very easily. So I know a lot of folks like to use PDFs, but taking that one extra step and maybe exporting as an image, Collaborator gives you a powerful functionality that you're not necessarily relying on looking at two images at the same time, but rather two images stacked on top of each other and easily identifying those changes. So with that, any more questions and answers? That wraps up what we wanted to talk about today. Are there any other questions from our panel? I am going to put out my last poll. Would you like to know more? Because we can certainly put you in touch with individuals that can get your hands on a demo. We're seeing a lot of individuals that are already using Collaborator, and for that we thank you. If you're not on the latest version of the server and your maintenance has expired, we can certainly get you updated on your maintenance to get that server updated for you. If you're currently under maintenance, you have access to that server right now, and you can get those updated. So I want to thank you for your time today, and stay home, stay safe, and stay on target. Thank you very much.